On
Unmuted.
mic.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay. So hi everybody. So my name is Jen. I'm a mother of five. Four of my kids have dyslexia, and one of whom also has a co-occurring ADHD. So today for this year, Spark PSG is doing this book, What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, by Dr. Sharon Celine. So for this particular session, we are actually covering two chapters. You can see over here. These are kind of rather related, and that's why they are placed together. Okay, so this person very correctly says that it is so important for us to be able to govern ourselves. Now, this is something that I take for myself very personally because I have realized over the years in my parenting journey that a lot of things are outside of my control. As a result, it is very important for me to be able uh, to make changes to myself so that I can better actually, if I regulate myself, I'm much better able to regulate what is going on around me. Okay. So
Yeah.
definitely important to have uh, to be able
We're
to
on nhiều
deep breathing. Okay, so maybe everybody join me right now. I'll say take a deep breath. This is something very, very important for me throughout, even though uh, I'm not young anymore, I find that learning how to deep breathe as well as count. Okay, I do this a lot even when I'm driving. So I would find myself counting in a very, very heavy traffic, for example. Okay. So when I'm much calmer, I find that it is better, it is easier for me to be able to reflect and handle the issue at hand, right? Next, sometimes we are really thinking about there's a lot of thoughts probably for a lot of us, right? How can I actually um, do this? How am I better able to exercise self-control, right? So together with that, it helps to know what are my parenting goals. So perhaps even right now, right, on the chat, I'd like you to perhaps off your head, what really is your parenting goal? Are you able to give us some of your thoughts about this matter, right? How many of you place as the greatest importance, for example, that your child, score very high results? Now, perhaps as parents with ADHD children, that might not be top on our list, but I can imagine that before I'm much more aware, like I am now, that was something rather important. Okay. So, aside from having parenting goals of having your children score well, which is, I would say, rather normal, now I am learning, for example, gaining skills and knowledge as one of the important thing of my goal as a parent. And how about building a lifelong foundation of learning that fosters curiosity, confidence, and autonomy, right? So let's consider for a moment, okay? The similarities and differences between your own educational history and your child's current situation. So for many of us, not really sure which years you were born in, like for me, right? In my time, right, as a student, for example, many of us were not given as much resources, right? And when I look at myself right now, okay, I am very gratified that I am a long, long way from the worst ever situation. So when I look at that, it does help me to not feel so anxious about my child's maybe inability to perform as well. Okay. So, so when I am assured that like me, my child will turn out okay, because, and especially if he or she has a caring, committed adult on their side, and I'm sure all of us are that way. The very reason why you are attending this PSG Zoom tells me that you are. That tells you that your child will be all right. Okay. Okay. So, by the way, whose responsibility is it, right, for your child, okay, to turn out well? And so that comes with a choice, right? The choice is mine as a mother
Recording in progress.
to offer emotional support, to stick by my child.
St. Jen, you are echoing. Is there somebody else trying to record the meeting? Perhaps, please don't do that because suddenly we hear an echo.
Oh, thanks a lot, Jaya. Okay, that's better. Okay, so basically, as parent, as a mother, the buck stops at me, right? I get a choice to choose to accept my child, and I get a choice to exercise self-control. And this is very, very difficult for us all to accept, right? As parents, right? We live in a time that's very different from our parents' time. When I was growing up, my parents did not often exercise self-control. So why must I do that? So this is something really, really important for me as I go through this entire journey of parenting my children, all right, especially one with learning difficulty. I get to make that choice, okay? So I need to have that confidence in their abilities even when they lack it. What does that mean? That means right now when I look at my child do not have these capabilities. But if I were to scold my child the way I was scolded, scream at them, get frustrated, which, believe me, I often am, right? If not for attending a lot of these classes, if not for learning that, then I'm unlikely to have this confidence in them. But yes, okay, as I develop my own muscles, I gain confidence in my child, and my child too gain confidence in his or her ability. Okay, so let's talk about homework right now. Okay, so homework is something that is very, very frustrating, right? For a lot of our parents, our children with my daughter with ADHD, really find homework to be something very, very important. It would be really, really often that I would, all right, this is a little far-fetched in the picture, but that's not uncommon, that it would be a point of great contention and a way to, cause us to get really angry and for that relationship to turn really bad. So what can I do? What are some homework don'ts, which this book, Dr. Sharon Celine has very wisely given us this advice? Don't yell, okay? Now I could definitely benefit from that. Don't give up. Very important too, right? We need as parents to allow time limited breaks, right? 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 When a child gets home from school. This means that when they come home from school, don't direct them immediately to do their homework. Do give them break, okay? And I think we have talked about the Pomodoro method. If you have questions about that, we can talk more about it. But basically, I think she is saying to rein in the feelings of aggravation. And I'm very, very familiar with this feeling personally. Like you feel your fury rising up from inside. But realize that when we become angry, right, we are actually allowing our children, allowing the situation to take control of us versus us gaining the self-control, right? So have a homework plan is really important. And for myself too, the homework plan actually, a personal sharing involves sometimes negotiating with the teacher about what my child is able or unable to do. I know it sounds like a very crazy idea for some of us, but there are a lot more enlightened teachers out there who I find have been able to actually have a conversation with, and as they understand our child's diagnosis, they are more able to actually perhaps allow a reduced homework plan. Okay. Now, self-control, here is in page 101 in this book, It's like following the instructions about oxygen masks on airplane. You put yours on and then one on your child. Us first, then our children. And the self-control gives you the perspective and clarity of mind to tame the homework monster. Very, very great, a very useful, guide and advice for all us parents, right? So yes, it depends on us. So yes, allow access to cell phone, but not during homework study hours. We know the reason why this is suggested because our ADHD children, our children with ADHD are very easily distracted. So this would be very, very important. So put these cell phones away. Avoid letting the child multitask. Now, sorry, wrong spelling. But this is such a great advice. Now, even for me right now, right? Studies have shown, right, that multitasking is not good for everyone. How much more our children with ADHD. So that's something that I'm like making sure I myself am not doing too, right? So expect pushback when child reaches adolescence, and we definitely are going to find that if you are a parent with a child at teenage years, don't expect that is going to go as easily with you. It will be easier to work on children that are younger, right? And be connect with your child positively. I can't emphasize important how really important it is for all we parents, right? And we have found this to be really, really useful, right? So having said that, okay, I am going to invite on Jason. All right, he's a
Uh,
parent, and I'll give him the time to to introduce himself, and then I will ask him a few questions, but I'll give the time to Jason. Hi, Jason.
hi, Jason here. Sorry, I think my daughters actually played with my screen a little bit, so that's them. They have my rainbow eyes on. But yes, I'm Jason. I have two girls, 6 and 7, and I have been diagnosed with ADHD myself. So I'm having the nightmares of my childhood. And at the same time, also my girls have not been diagnosed, but they've shown signs, and I want to bring them up in an emotionally healthy environment. So being part of this community has been very helpful. So that's the quick summary of myself. And then one is in primary one, and then the other one's in K2. Hmm.
Yeah, but practice really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thanks, Jason. Would you
Mm.
tell us, as someone who knows that you have ADHD, and as a parent yourself, that must be doubly difficult for you, right? Exercising self-control, because I see your two girls
Mm.
are kind of young. So
Mm.
you said there are 7
Six
and
and six.
7, six
Yeah.
years old, the twin girls, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one calendar year apart, but 18 months in
Oh,
biological age. Yeah, yeah.
oh, okay. Got it. So how do you exercise self-control personally? I mean, what's your journey of self-control? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I myself lack self-control. So I think for once I think I start with myself lah. But I think before I did it, I want to mention that it is actually a neurological choice, not a behavioral. And so think of it like the amygdala, which is the emotional center, fires up faster, and then the thinking brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, catches up later. So it's also proven that usually the development is delayed by 3 to 5 years behind. So they may actually lag in that. So how I practice self control is I have to have techniques, and I think I try to regulate myself first. So I realized that exercising is helpful. So I exercise in the morning. I realized that meditation and also calming myself down. So when my kid is angry, right, I actually start to calm myself down first before I calm them down, and that helps. So basically, a regulated parent creates a regulated child. And that becomes my first point. So I actually start with putting the oxygen on me to have more air before my daughters. Like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what strategies, thank you. Well, I think that is really, really good. I feel like you have a very this ability to actually become aware
Yeah.
that you are triggered. So you can sense when that trigger is happening, right?
Yes. Good
You
sense.
can sense it within your body, the
Yes.
trigger, and then you begin to consciously
Yeah.
uh, exercise self-control
Yeah.
right when the trigger is happening.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. That
So
must be,
so yeah, when children when they feel the emotions, right, it's very intense and very quick. It's like flooding, it just floods in you. So then in order to support them, you need to start with yourself first.
okay, thank you. So I'm
Mm.
going to like go a little bit further
Yeah.
and ask you, what do you do? What strategies do you adopt to help them though?
Okay, so I think first off is to separate my children from the emotion itself. So literally on Easter Sunday, we were in Malaysia. I'm from KL, and my older one literally pulled the youngest hair go up until basically her whole hair fly. I like almost like the whole hair could come off her head, and they just got angry over a small matter. And as a result of that, we looked at her really upset, and I made a mistake by not calming down myself and my wife, and then she ended up screaming in a room full of like 20, 30 family members, and then ran to the bedroom. Like, okay, pause. So I went into the room, and I could see her sobbing, and then the younger sister's painful all her head. The older sister is crying in the room. So then, what do I do, right? So I start the three C's, I guess, to memorize it. Is first, I calm her down, because the emotions are like waves. You cannot argue with a wave. You can just ride it and then teach a child how to surf it, right? And I just sit with her, let her cry it out, let her hug me, then she start to sob and then tear and slow down with the tissue. Then my second C after calming them is calling it out. I say, so what happened just now? And in calling out, like, what you must be really angry, and you must say. So I call it out what happened, and remember they're not defiant and angry; they're just dysregulated, because it's a neurological thing. So you calm them, you call it out, and then the second one is you connect with them to self-reflect. So connect means that, oh wow, you must be really upset over your sister taking your toy, so you pull her hair, right? Yeah, yeah, I was really upset. It's her fault. And because she cannot regulate, like I always see children who are like, intense, even myself, right? They're like without a volume knob yet. So our role is best to calm them down and teach them how to tune themselves, right? So I start with connection before the correction. And as I connect with them, oh, you must be really angry. And yeah, do you think that she deserves to be pulled her hair that way? And then she think, oh, maybe not. I know it's angry. Maybe I should tell you first, or I shouldn't be so I calm her, call it out that how she felt, and then connect with them, right? And then after that, I out of so as a first of all, I became a regulated parent. Then second, I became a relational parent, so I could relate to them. And when they feel related, then they start to calm down. And then I said, um, now if it's a bit bad, would you actually say sorry to your sister, right? And if she's willing to forgive you, would you do it, right? I said, no, 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 no. Then I said, will she forgive me? Then I said, okay, let me go and talk to your sister. So I go to her, Sierra, and I said, oh, Eloise is there. She's very sad. Would you forgive her? Sierra is a negotiator. Said, I will forgive her if she buys me a toy with her pocket money. And then I'm like, okay. I mean, like I can do the deal with that. Then I go to Eloise and said, oh, can you? She's willing to forgive you, but she wants sort of like a toy or compensation. Said she thinks about it and said, okay, I'll buy her a toy, but I also want to buy a toy myself with my pocket money from Chinese New Year. So then at the end, both of them said sorry and forgave each other, and then it ended up well. But that whole process took about 30 minutes, right? So I think the whole point is to first of all call what happened, calm them, call it out, and then connect with them to self-reflect, right? Yeah, as opposed to the three C's that you shouldn't do, which is to cane them, correct them, and try to chastise them. As long as you might be guilty of that. But yeah, that's
Mm,
how I do it. Yeah.
I really love that. Thank you so much, Jason.
Mm.
I also want to say for all of us who are now listening, uh, thank you so much for also, adding to the chat. If there's any comment you have about this, I have to apologize. I'm not really good with like managing this whole Zoom thing. So when I like open up my screens, right, which I'm supposed to be controlling, I cannot read all the chats. But thank you, Diane, thank you, Huyen, thank you, Yumin, Jia
Mm.
also, right? And all of you who actually added to the chat.
Mm.
Also, I think Carmen. Now, what you can do is I'd like to hear your comment. Can you put into the chat what you think? Yeah, I really like, yeah, don't cane, correct, chastise, right? And really, I think that's very helpful. I like that you have it all in all the acronyms, right? C,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Call out, right?
yeah.
And
That's
then
right.
connect, right? That sounds really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hold Jason there. There's more that we want to ask you. But I want to, Jason went ahead. Already talked about managing the big feeling, right? Jason, you can write a book already. So yes, the amygdala, which is a part inside, right in the deep part, right on top of our brainstem, is where the amygdala is actually positioned. And it causes somebody to get really frustrated, and the impulsiveness, the anger that rises up when something happens is the way it is neurological. It is not something that they have in control of, right? So this happens, you know that the amygdala is working, all right, and is in high stress when emotions rule, right? Exactly. They call it the amygdala hijack, which is, I love that. I know it's sounded like a very stressful situation, but you made it all sound not very stressful because you were telling us, right, how it is. So, what happened is that it got hijacked. So the strategies that is in the book, okay, let's see, let's try to see if Jason has some in common with Dr. Celine. All right. Yes, I think you talk about that, right? Calm, right? So that stop, right? And then he says, call out, think, right? What did you do? And then he says act. And for him, I think Jason's 3C is easier to remember. And a C is actually, right, connect, right? Get them to apologize, get them to, but first they must have that awareness, okay? Second, which I think is suggested by Dr. Celine, is to role play a worst case scenario exercise to address irrational fear. Do you get to do that? Do you do that with your children, Jason?
Yeah, I do that actually. Sometimes I say like, what's the okay? So literally just now, right? They were playing on the bed, right? And then my older one actually tried to push their sister off the bed, and I said, oh, and then I really ran and then saved the younger one and said, hey, do you know what's the consequence of pushing a sister down the bed? And then Eloise paused for a while and said, will she die? And I said, no. So that's one worst case scenario, but she might go to the hospital and we won't have any more fun together. It was a bit of like a family playtime at night. And then they said, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't do it, right? So that moment itself, let them think of the worst case scenario. Mm.
Right. I really like that you were using that. It's not exactly a role play. That was like a real situation, but you made it into a role play because you caught her, right? And then
Yes,
you're
that's
like
right.
saying, so he is playing out the worst case scenario for that child, the dysregulated child, to kind of understand consequences. Now, now I'm going to ask you, Jason, right?
Mm.
We know that a person with ADHD often have irrational fear.
Mm.
So if you were going to be teaching your child how not to play, how not to have irrational fear, which is quite often in this group of people, like they think of the worst thing, they they they
Yes.
they overthink, right? So how
Yes.
can you maybe help yourself, for example, or teach your child?
Ah, okay, good. So, my older one has a fear of going underwater. So they've gone for like swimming classes, and the swimming coach said that she cannot submerge herself underwater because she thinks too much. So that the swimming coach says that way, and so then what I did was I played YouTube videos of how kids did it, and they take deep breaths, like what we did just now before go submersing, and uh, and then and then we did it. So I did it with them. And then another one that the coach says that when you bathe her, right, do you actually spray the shower on her face? I said, oh, we don't. We try to avoid her eyes because she screams. Then I said, okay, now you got to train her to do that. And then I said, in order for you to be a good swimmer, and then I said you got to take the deep breath, and then I said that 75% of the world is covered in water, and you need to learn swimming because it's important. And and so I rationalized with her. I showed her techniques on YouTube, and I gave her something practical. So, okay, I'm just going to put water on your face for 1 or 2 seconds. Then after that, start longer. And then recently, again, over the weekend, she started to go underwater for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and say, look, Daddy, I'm taking deep breaths and going down. So that worked in that context. Mm,
You. I really like that you are
mm,
actually this is something for he's given
mm,
really good practical
mm.
advice. Now for older ones might be a little bit difficult. Now personally for my daughter who has a fear of a new situation, she wouldn't even go up to a shop to buy things. Actually, that was
Ah,
one of the things that kind of like made me aware that this child is a little bit unusual, right? So what we do is we try to like give her a lot of practice lah. But of course we talk to her, what's the worst thing that can happen? If maybe you are shouted at, which is in their brain something that could happen, or I might even do it with her and make it as do that often enough so that they learn not to see it as something frightening, right? And their amygdala will not get hijacked. Okay. So the third point she has raised is see the discouragement and sadness beneath the outburst, meltdown, and talk about it. So how do you do that, Jason?
Mm. Yeah, I think I start by naming it, like what was she discouraged about, and talk about it. So uh for the first time 2 weeks ago, right, the Chinese teacher, I had a call from the school and said, "Oh, your daughter was caught cheating in her Chinese exam, and she actually missed 2 days of school because she was sick after Chinese New Year, and then the spelling test was like the day after, and because she had set sort of some high expectation on herself, right, she decided to put the textbook on her lap, and no thinking that no one would see. Then when she got caught, she started bursting into tears, and there was a lot of sadness and everything. That the Chinese teacher called me and said, "This happened 10 minutes ago. We didn't scold her just to let you know she's feeling very emotional right now." And then what I learned then after that was I spoke to my wife and said, "Okay, when she come home, let's take her for a walk in the park, and then start to name up what happened." And then when we name it out, and we talk it through, when she slept, she was actually she didn't have that sort of irrational fear anymore. And I think what was the process was just talking with her, talking, let her talk, let her reflect. Maybe she doesn't want to talk. Actually, in fact, when my wife spoke to her, like the first 15 minutes, she didn't want to say anything. And she just go to the park, and then they just sat on the swing, then just walk a bit. Then suddenly she started to talk. So I think maybe some physical activity and talking it out helped her to regulate herself from the irrational fear. And then of course she then knew it wasn't a good thing to do it. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
you know the funny story? A couple months ago, right? I shared that when I was young, I cheated in exams, and I said you shouldn't be cheating. I think she drew some inspiration from that, but the wrong inspiration. So I still felt guilty. But yeah.
So I think like your daughter is kind of young, and so she's not too young for you to
Mm.
address the sadness beneath the
Mm.
outburst. And I thought it's good that you actually recognize that the motivation for her cheating was because she wanted to do well.
Yeah.
Imagine if she gets called out in school and at home we double scold her, then she would feel so
Yes.
disheartened, right? So talking
Yeah,
about
that's right.
it is not to condemn, but to let out that emotion, to help her see that, to understand, I guess that that's
Mm.
not the best thing to do. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. Right. So basically, I think what we are addressing right now, as we all can see, is this iceberg, right? Whenever there is a meltdown, what we see is what is above, which is anger, right? Right? All of the negative or maybe even positive emotion, right? Because for people with ADHD, they do exhibit that. But what here at the bottom that is very often disregarded is the feeling of being overwhelmed, the disappointment, the hurt, feeling unjustly targeted, insecurity, self-criticism, the negative thinking, worry, fear, all of that. So we have kind of like, reframe energetic, passionate, sensitive instead of angry, right? Instead of like, it's really kind of important that instead of saying that, oh, this child is bad-tempered, is hopeless, for example, or something that we as parents use very, very frequently, sometimes when we are angry, which I am guilty of, which we should stop, because it doesn't help, right? To think of them as energetic, passionate, sensitive, and we need to phrase it in our mouth correctly. When a child is anxious, right, we say, yeah, you know why? This child wants things to be done well. That's why they are anxious, right? When they have unmet expectation of goals, then that shows itself at the top as disappointment, right? So, wow. Okay, sorry. Right. So, looking at our children, it is so easy, right, to look at what is on the surface. It is the emotion that they have that make things happen, right? So this is the biology of ADHD, emotional outburst. We talked earlier about the hijack, amygdala hijack. So in page 159, she says, when you follow worry to its irrational end, logic and often humor kick in, bringing back the director and calm along the way, right? The same words that Jason was used just now. So how can caring parents help them to separate feeling from the person, provide practice and strong support, right? Okay. Okay, I'm not sure why it comes out all in the wrong order, excuse me. But first, reframe, right? Talk to them, right? Which is Jason mentioned just now. Foster self-esteem resilience by separating feeling from the person, right? I think you did that. Control, by doing that, we control the volume of their negative voice to provide practice and strong support. Now, so how to cultivate resilience? We wish that happens suddenly, immediately, but no, it doesn't. So we need to help them combat negative thinking with, right? I think just now Jason also mentioned sports, right? He mentioned sports, develop hobbies, right? Television sometime within certain allowable time. Don't say take them all out, right? Yeah, computer time, yes. Limited time. Friends, yes. Positive self-talk. Okay. So I reserve time for my second interviewee, and that's Jeremy. Okay. So I'd like Jeremy to introduce yourself, and I'm sure Jeremy has a lot. So I'm giving this best time for you, Jeremy, right?
Hi, Shekjan. Yeah, it's a tough act to follow, man. Jason was very good. Yeah, I think he had a lot of really good points to bring up, and I really like what he said about calming yourself first. I think like as ADHD people, we get too swept up in the emotion of the moment, and it sounds very easy and it's very straightforward. But I think when you have this whirlwind of emotional chaos around you, it's very easy to get swept in as well, and it's quite a big skill to learn how to do that consciously all the time. Yeah. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Yeah. So I should introduce myself, right? So I'm Jeremy. I met Sigjan and the people at Spark because I used to work with Spark. I didn't know I had ADHD until a couple of years ago. And then when I found out, I told some of my friends, and then they said, "How come you didn't know? We all seem to know." Um, and it's quite obvious from the outside looking in, but I guess from the inside looking out, it's not so obvious. I think because we only have one perspective in our whole life to compare everything else to. Um, and the part I think that Jason talked about regarding having, I think not just Jason, but actually you also talked about regarding having big emotions is I think something that I also struggled with uh, my entire life. Depression, anxiety, and it's not just me because if you find out you have ADHD, you find out 90% of your, actually 100% of your friends have ADHD as well. So you find out that, oh, it seems like everybody is struggling with a lot of negative thoughts, anxiety, and depression, and these are the things that um, it's it's much better for people like human beings, right, to learn how to deal with them at a young age. Maybe not deal with them, but to manage this part of you from a young age, because it doesn't get easier. Well, you have to build a good foundation because life gets more complicated. There's more stuff being thrown at you. There's more things that you have to deal with, and learning that skill at a young age is so valuable. Especially in this day and age that we live in, right? With all the AI, the technology, you don't know where the world is going to go. And I think building that emotional resilience allows you to capitalize on the strengths of your ADHD a lot more, which is, creativity, um, and creativity, the ability to learn new skills, to develop new hobbies. And these are like our strengths, right? And apparently, this is the era that ADHD people are going to be the most valuable in, because the world is changing so fast. Only we, with our 10,000 hobbies, are able to keep up with the changes in the world. Um, and having that emotional resilience, the ability to manage your internal critic, right? The voice in your head that is criticizing you all the time. Knowing how to manage that, knowing how to say like, this is useful and this is not useful, and then focusing on the life goals ahead of you. That's such a important skill in this day and age.
Thank you, Jeremy. I
Yeah.
just want to pick up on what you mentioned. I'm very glad you were paying attention because you mentioned a lot of things that you talked about. So personally, for someone who has ADHD, even though you didn't know about it, um, and you talk about uh the negative emotion that you kind of experience most time in your life. Can you kind of explain it a little bit more so that the parents here, all right, who perhaps might not even know they have ADHD, right? I mean, perhaps how can they then, especially their older children with ADHD, they are already too late, right? You said easier when they are young, but really
I mean,
hard,
it's never too late, but
right?
it's easier when you're
Right.
younger.
How do you think like how can they be encouraged to be, more accepting, more understanding?
Of who who can be more accepting, understanding. Sorry, I
Yeah,
need to.
parents, I mean that,
Yeah.
because if we don't cross this bridge, right,
Mm.
about parents admitting that they need self-control.
You know,
Why is yeah,
I tell you a story, right? Um, Long ago, like I didn't work, so I decided to try and drive Grab because it's very free and easy. And I'm not the kind of person that has a regular sleeping schedule, so Grab was quite okay for me, except that I don't like driving. And I think like the first couple of weeks I was like breaking even, and then I think the last week I decided, I should, since I'm working, I shouldn't be breaking even. I should be making at least some money. So I found out that people were working like 14 hours a day, driving for 14 hours a day. I tried that, and then towards the end of the week, um, you know, I wanted. I knew I was tired. My eyes were starting to close, and I wanted to stop. But in my head, I can hear this criticism, of you know, influential figures in my life criticizing me, saying, "Why you so lazy? Why you don't work harder? Why you don't try harder? Why you don't try anything at all?" And this voice is just going on, and then I just said, "Okay, I'll just do one more trip and one more trip." And I think I said that to myself twice, and I got into a pretty big accident. And this is what I mean by that that unforgiving voice in your head that sometimes causes you to push yourself harder than you need to or you should, that kind of gets you into trouble. Sometimes you need to push yourself, and sometimes you shouldn't push yourself, and knowing the difference is very important, especially, you know I mean, in this world, like, nobody gets anywhere without taking risks, but I think knowing taking risks is valuable when you have emotional regulation. Without emotional regulation, risk taking is too much of a liability.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. It sounds like something for us parents to be aware of is that our children with ADHD are trying harder than you think. Normal, those of us who are neurotypical may not completely understand the great extent, the effort that is put in, that would still sound to be too little in your eyes, but it is great effort on their part and should be appreciated. Yeah. Okay, my question to you here is that imagine you are a parent, right? Imagine, okay, I know you are an eligible bachelor, okay? Okay. So parents need to cultivate self-control as part of our growth. All right. So, if we do not cultivate self-control as parents, what is likely to happen? Okay. Let's project it from your example just now about accident occurring as a result of you pushing yourself too hard.
um I think that, like, why I like what Jason said about calm yourself first is because, um and firstly, it's not easy. It's a great skill. And secondly, it's because, before your child goes out into the world, right? And and even after they go out into the world. I think you're the first a parent lah, would be the first example that a child understands how to act in life, right? Because they don't have any other example to draw from. And um yeah, sorry, you have to repeat the question again.
Oh, no, my point here is that what is I mean, we hear people talk about the cycle of aggression and guilt, right?
Mm,
As parents, if we do not see it as our responsibility to exercise self-control, our children may not have that better outcome in life. Would you say that
yeah.
is true?
Yeah,
Yep.
because it's normalized, right,
Yeah.
Jason?
Let me answer that, right? So I know it's a terrible example for me, but then I think 2 weeks ago, I get my kids to volunteer in our church, right? And there was one time and we have to go earlier, and there was one time we were really late and we were going to be late for church, and then I was trying to comb their hair, and I'm not very good at combing girls' hair, and then they're trying to very good. I was so angry, and I'm normally a calm person. I don't look like. I actually threw the comb on the floor and it broke into pieces because it's a cheap Shopee comb, right? And then the girls looked and they started crying, They're like, oh my God, it's worse. and and then I realized that if I throw a comb and then they started crying, then I feel that in the future they can start throwing things on the ground because they are angry as well. Then at the moment itself, I just calm myself down, like drank a glass of water, and then I actually paused and actually apologized to my daughters for throwing the comb. And then we slowly headed our way to church, and we were late as it was. But then I realized that if I didn't correct and told them that I was wrong and say sorry, then I realized that they now have the right to do it. And if I just disregarded it, right, and I scolded them for doing it, then they cannot be a parent that they would respect if I don't admit of my mistake, right? So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think correcting yourself if you did it wrong is one. And then when you see them do it as well, then it's also naming it and say that they should self-reflect. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't ever I try not to tell my kids don't do it because it's bad, but I say that, oh, what happened? It looks like you did it. No, you think it's bad or good, then you get them to come to that conclusion that it was bad. Then usually it works better than just saying, don't do this, don't do that. Yeah.
I
Mm.
love inviting both of you to this session because,
Mhm.
Jason, I think you set the bar too high for us parents. What do you say,
No,
Jeremy? Say something, Jeremy. Come, let's be
We are
positive.
all works in progress,
Yeah,
okay?
mhm. But say, most of us don't experience that from our parents, right?
Yeah.
Honestly.
When I was young, I kena a lot of caning lah, so I don't know. It was a different time.
Yeah, but there are still parents, and nowadays they take this really seriously. Did you read in the newspaper that there's a parent, I think, out there in front of the childcare?
yeah.
The father, I think, slapped the child, and he's being investigated. I mean, we are living in very different times now. But
Mm.
of our own accord, now, obviously, you can do this in closed door, right? And no one will know. But what is the motivation, Jeremy? I ask you because you are the kind of the philosopher here, right? What is the motivation for parents to want to make those change? I think it's really, really good what Jason and fantastic
Yeah.
Jason, amazing self-awareness. But for those other of us that are struggling, what will be a motivation? Would you say that there's a cause and effect from what I hear from you?
Okay. Yes. I think yeah, it's definitely a cause and effect lah. The how what I was telling Sekjen was if you have never thought about something, usually if you think about something, what the kind of thoughts that you entertain define your life. So if you didn't think about it, you wouldn't have talked about it. If you didn't talk about it, you wouldn't have done it. And if you entertain negative thoughts and if you entertain things that are, you know, if you don't rise to be a better, you don't entertain the better side of yourself. If you don't rise to the better side of yourself, then you won't talk about the better things that this child would need to learn from, and you won't show them the better things that this child would need to learn from in order to be the person that they can be proud of and you are proud of, right? um it's tough, man. Trying to cultivate another human being is so tough because you even cultivating yourself is so difficult, just trying to be a better person. and yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I think it's kind of like a very, very complex topic. I think what I'm really trying to do here is to help us really see what would motivate us to have self-control as parents. It's really not something easy. So, yeah, what do you say, Jason?
Y- You know, I was talking to my friend recently, and he just had his first kid, and then he told me that having a kid is like a huge unlock. He said like it changed the way he looks at life so much. And yeah, we used to have fun and play a lot of games together, but now he's like a different guy, man. And I'm happy for him, you know?
Mm, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to
Yeah.
give Jason some time. 2 minutes,
Oh,
Jason.
yeah. I think self-control starts by knowing your range. Like in order to bring the best out of your kid, you got to bring the best out of yourself, and you got to know the worst of yourself. And I think Jeremy also was saying so on point. I feel that you're either on a downward spiral or you're an upward spiral. I think there's only two ways to go, upwards or downwards. So in order to practice self-control is to try to find yourself into an upward spiral. Yeah, so you create early wins for your kids and you channel them there. Yeah. So for me, being type A and over ambitious, right? The moment I saw my daughters, they enjoy speaking in public, right? And I said, I'm going to sign you up for public speaking class, and I like get them to address the number one fear of all mankind, which is to speak in public. And now they're so confident, and I get them to speak to older people, join the Zoom calls. They were actually at the pre-Zoom call, and then they will interact with adults. And that is a way to practice having all these wins so that you have more control over yourself and awareness.
Mm,
Yeah.
Actually, you're right, you know. Confidence is really the number one skill for success in life, I think.
mm,
And those with ADHD has strong hyper focus as well. So once they latch onto something, oh, they're gonna be so good at it, right? Like even from Grab and extending yourself there, right? So when you put your hobbies to, you can do so well.
right. Wow. Thank you so much. So much to think about. And I thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, Jeremy. And I know Jeremy is staying
Mhm.
on because there are uh, conversations that we're going to be having. I'm going to hand the time to Kai Ming right now because Kai Ming is going to lead us into a place of discussion, right? So, Kai Ming?
So thank you, Seth Jam, for the thing. Okay, I'll be opening the room shortly. So yeah. So just stay back and I open right now.